The moment I saw the cruise documents, something in me cracked. They weren't hidden, not exactly. Just lying there on the entryway table at my parents' house, glossy tickets tucked neatly inside a cream envelope embossed with Alaskan Adventure 7-day cruise. The envelope was open, carelessly abandoned like junk mail. But inside were names typed in sharp black ink. Mom. Harper. Cody. My name wasn't there. I held the papers longer than I should have, my fingers leaving faint smudges across their smooth surface. First, my brain scrambled for excuses. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe my name was on a separate document. Maybe this was just a deposit confirmation. But the longer I stared, the harder the truth pressed against my ribs. They hadn't invited me. Again. My mother's voice broke the silence. "Oh, honey, you're early." I looked up to see her bustling from the kitchen, her hands still damp from washing dishes. She smiled, but the corners of her mouth twitched when she noticed what I was holding. Her steps faltered. "You're always so busy with that job of yours," she said, her tone airy but brittle. A strange clarity washed over me, the kind that doesn't come in loud, cinematic waves but creeps in quietly like morning fog. My voice emerged softer than I expected. "You never asked me." Her expression flickered, surprise, maybe even guilt, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "You made sure I couldn't come," I said, the words trembling in my throat before solidifying. The silence that followed felt like a confession. The weight of every unspoken truth pressed down on the air between us. "This isn't the first time, is it?" My voice sharpened, the realization blooming like a bruise. All those family trips I only heard about afterward. The holiday gatherings conveniently scheduled while I was working. Every so-called misunderstanding. It wasn't random, was it? It was a pattern. My mother stepped forward, her hand outstretched as if she could erase everything by touch. "Honey, you're overreacting. Let's sit down and—" "No," I set the cruise documents on the entry table. The paper made a faint thud against the wood, heavier than it had any right to. Without raising my voice, without slamming a single door, I picked up the overnight bag I'd dropped when I arrived. My fingers clenched the strap like a lifeline. Then I walked out into the evening air. Behind me, I heard her call my name, desperation straining her voice. But for the first time in 28 years, I didn't turn back. 30 minutes later, my apartment felt cavernous, the quiet pressing against me like a second skin. After the confrontation, the silence should have been comforting. Instead, it echoed. I dropped my overnight bag on the couch and sank to the floor. My knees folded beneath me as I dragged shoeboxes and dusty photo albums from the back of the closet. The carpet scratched against my bare legs as I spread everything in a semicircle around me. The first photo album fell open to Christmas 2018. Harper unwrapping a gleaming MacBook. Cody beaming beside his first car, used but still worth thousands. And then me, holding up a scarf from Target with the $19.99 tag still dangling. My smile in the photo was wide, teeth gleaming, eyes bright. Genuine. Because back then I believed it was all they could afford. But looking at it now, I saw the lie written in the background. The expensive camera Dad used to take the photo, the pile of electronics littering the floor around my siblings. My smile blurred under the weight of recognition. I flipped through the pages, each turn another blow. Yellowstone National Park. Sorry, rain, someone has to water the plants. Disney World. Your internship is that week, remember? Weekend in Napa. You wouldn't enjoy it anyway, honey. Excuses layered over excuses until the truth revealed itself. I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded. My phone buzzed on the carpet beside me. A text from Mom glowed across the screen. "We need to talk about this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. As if decades of deliberate exclusion could be misinterpreted. I silenced my phone and opened my laptop. A spreadsheet blinked back at me. My monthly budget, tidy rows and columns stretching back years. I scrolled, highlighting each transfer I'd made into my parents' account. $350 April. Dad's insulin costs went up. $1,400 June. Hospital copay for Dad's diabetes. $800 August. Mom's car needed a new transmission. $2,800 last month. Family emergency fund. The last one hit hardest. My Lake Tahoe money. I'd been saving for that trip for over a year. Taking on freelance projects, skipping lunches, sacrificing weekends. All for a vacation I never took. They had looked me in the eye while accepting my sacrifice, knowing all along they were planning a cruise without me. My stomach clenched. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was cumulative, a slow drip of poison I'd swallowed without noticing until now. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Age 7, sitting at the kitchen table while Harper practiced scales with her vocal coach. "Can I take piano lessons too?" I'd asked, my voice timid. "We can't afford 2 kids in music lessons," Mom had said gently. "Maybe next year." But next year never came. 6 months later, Cody got guitar lessons. Another memory. Age 13. Tears burning down my face when Dad told me the 8th grade science trip to the Oregon coast was too expensive. $400 is too much right now, sweetheart. 3 weeks later, they surprised Cody with a father-son camping trip that cost double. The memories flooded faster now. College years spent juggling 3 jobs while Harper's rent was quietly covered. Cody's car insurance paid without question. "You're just so independent, honey," Mom had said, pride coating her voice. "We know you can handle it." Well, I hadn't been independent. I'd been abandoned. The sound of my phone ringing jerked me back to the present. Harper's name flashed across the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Rain, this is ridiculous," she began, her voice sharp with exasperation. "You're making Mom cry. I found the cruise documents, Harper. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice softened unnaturally, as if rehearsed. "We meant to invite you, but Mom said you'd understand. You always do." The last 3 words hung between us like a verdict. "You always do." "Not anymore," I whispered and ended the call. The apartment seemed to shrink around me, suffocating with memories and evidence. My gaze landed on the top shelf of my closet where a small box sat untouched. I pulled it down, hands trembling. Inside was a jewelry-making kit, still shrink-wrapped. The exact one I'd begged for on my 9th birthday. Mom had said it was too expensive before buying Harper her 3rd American Girl doll. "I bought this kit for myself last year on Etsy. $35. I'd kept it sealed, though I hadn't known why until now. It was proof. Proof that if I wanted something I had to give it to myself. 'Cause my family never would. And tonight, for the first time, I couldn't unsee it. I didn't sleep that night. The city outside my apartment had long gone quiet, but my mind refused to follow. Every time I closed my eyes, the glow of those cruise documents burned against the darkness. My thoughts churned like restless waves, dredging up memories I hadn't asked for but could no longer avoid. It was as if opening that envelope had ripped a seam in my brain, and now every forgotten slight, every brushed-off request, every moment I'd swallowed without protest came rushing back in vivid, merciless detail. The first memory came from childhood. I was 6, sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet with crayons scattered around me. I'd drawn a family picture. Mom, Dad, Harper, Cody, and me. All of us smiling, holding hands. When I showed it to Mom, she cooed and smoothed my hair. "Oh, sweetie, that's beautiful." Then she tacked it to the refrigerator, right next to Harper's Best of the Month spelling award. By the next week, my picture was gone, replaced by Cody's macaroni art. "Where's my drawing?" Task. "It fell down," Mom said. "I'll put it back later." But she never did. Another memory surged forward. Age 10, the year Harper landed the lead in her school play. Our house buzzed with activity that spring. Mom sewed costumes, Dad built props. Cody tagged along to rehearsals like Harper's personal mascot. And me. I wanted to audition too. I don't think that's a good idea, Rain, Dad had said gently. Harper's got this special opportunity, and it wouldn't be fair to take attention away from her. Why don't you help backstage instead? So I did. I painted sets and carried water bottles, watching from the wings as Harper shone under the stage lights. When the curtain call came, the audience leapt to their feet for her. I clapped until my palms stung, smiling through the hollow ache in my chest. At 14, the memories grew sharper, crueler. The 8th grade science trip was the one that broke me then, though I hadn't realized it at the time. $400. Dad shook his head. That's a luxury, sweetheart. We just can't justify it. I'd nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I understand. But a month later, Dad and Cody packed up the car for their camping trip. New gear, fresh supplies, even a rented kayak strapped to the roof. I remember standing on the porch, watching them pull out of the driveway. Mom waved cheerfully. Her arm looped around Harper's shoulders as they planned a girls' spa day. No one noticed me. The memories began to pile on, each one heavier than the last. 17 years old, acceptance letters arriving in thick envelopes. Mine from a state university with partial scholarship. Harper's from an expensive art school in New York. We'll make it work, Dad had declared, pride bursting from his chest. They cashed in part of their retirement, took out loans, did whatever it took to send Harper to her dream. For me. They shook their heads. You're so practical, Rain, Mom said. You'll be fine on your own. You've always been independent. Independent. That word again. The sugar-coated excuse for abandonment. By 21, independence had a different flavor. Bitter, metallic. I worked 3 jobs to pay for tuition, ramen noodles my steady diet. I scraped together enough money to rent a cramped studio while my siblings thrived on parental support. Harper spent summers in Europe studying art history, expenses quietly covered by Mom and Dad. Cody crashed cars and switched majors 3 times, but his bills were always paid. And me. When my laptop died junior year, I maxed out a credit card for a refurbished one. My parents' response. Rain, you should have saved better. The irony still stings. The flood of memories blurred with the present as I scrolled through my bank statements again, each transaction like salt in an open wound. $2,800. Family Emergency Fund. The money that should have taken me to Lake Tahoe. I remembered standing in REI months ago, running my hand across a sleek red hiking backpack. I'd pictured myself on the trail, breathing crisp mountain air, the sun warming my skin. For once, a dream just for me. I'd walked away that day, telling myself I'd buy it after booking the cabin. But instead, that money went straight to my parents' account. Just a little help, Mom had said. We'll pay you back. They never did. I pushed the laptop aside and buried my face in my hands. The ache in my chest was no longer just sadness. It was rage, coiled tight and trembling. Not the fiery, screaming rage that explodes outward, but the quiet kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that whispers they built you into a safety net, not a daughter. As the night stretched on, I wandered into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My reflection in the darkened window startled me. Eyes red-rimmed, hair tangled, a woman on the edge of unraveling. But behind the exhaustion, something else glimmered. Resolve. I couldn't stop the flood of memories. They were carved into me, etched into every choice I'd ever made. But maybe, just maybe, I could start rewriting what came next. I thought about that jewelry-making kit in my closet. About the photo albums full of lopsided smiles and unequal gifts. About the spreadsheet of sacrifices that nobody acknowledged. And I thought about the cruise. 7 days in Alaska, while I sat here piecing together the truth of a lifetime. Well, not this time. I wouldn't beg for scraps of their love anymore. I set the empty glass in the sink and turned off the light. My apartment was silent again, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was mine. And in that silence, a plan began to take shape. By the time dawn crept in, my eyelids heavy and my body stiff, I felt something I hadn't in years: clarity. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't oversensitive. I wasn't misunderstanding. I had been deliberately pushed aside, piece by piece, until I accepted invisibility as my place in the family. But invisibility has its advantages. No one notices when the shadow finally decides to move. And when it does, can swallow the whole room. Morning arrived like an unwelcome guest, bright and intrusive. I dozed off on the couch, curled up among photo albums and crumpled tissues, but sleep had been shallow, riddled with flashes of childhood and the weight of last night's revelations. When I opened my eyes, the cruise documents loomed in my memory as vividly as if they were still sitting on the entryway table at my parents' house. I rubbed at my temples, trying to chase away the heaviness in my chest, but it clung stubbornly. I made coffee, black and bitter, and sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop still open to my budget spreadsheet. The numbers stared back at me, undeniable proof of my role in the family dynamic. Provider, problem solver, sacrifice. Never priority. A notification pinged at the corner of the screen. Another text from Mom. "Sweetheart, let's not blow this out of proportion. We love you. We just didn't think the cruise would be your kind of thing. Not my kind of thing." I laughed aloud, the sound sharp and humorless. 7 days of breathtaking landscapes, glaciers, whales, mountains. Wasn't my kind of thing. Well, what she really meant was we didn't want you there. Another buzz. This time from Harper. "Rain, seriously. You need to calm down. Mom's worried sick. Can't you just be happy for us?" The words blurred before my eyes. Happy for us. My hands curled into fists. That was the refrain of my entire life, wasn't it? Be happy for Harper's lead role. Be happy for Cody's new car. Be happy for everyone else, Rain. Never mind the hours I worked, the vacations I skipped, the dreams I shelved. I was expected to clap politely from the wings while they took center stage. Something inside me snapped, not with a bang, but with a quiet, decisive click, like a lock sliding open. Closed the laptop. The day stretched ahead, a blur of restless pacing and unfinished thoughts. Every task I tried to start, laundry, dishes, answering emails, crumbled under the weight of my spiraling mind. I'd pick up a shirt, then freeze mid-fold, remembering the time Mom called me selfish for asking why Harper always got new clothes while mine came secondhand. I'd open the fridge, only to remember Cody's graduation party, when I spent weeks planning the decorations and catering, only for everyone to praise Harper for helping because she showed up with balloons at the last minute. The memories were no longer background noise. They were jagged shards poking through every corner of my life. By late afternoon, I found myself standing at the closet again, staring at the jewelry-making kit. I pulled it down and tore the plastic off with shaking hands. The beads rattled in their compartments, bright and colorful. I threaded one onto the string, then another, but my hands shook so badly the beads slipped from my fingers and clattered across the hardwood. I sank to the floor, staring at the scattered colors. This wasn't just about a cruise. It wasn't even about the money, though the betrayal there was deep. It was about being erased. Piece by piece, year after year, they had erased me until all that was left was a placeholder. Useful when needed, invisible when not. And I had let them. The realization landed with brutal clarity. I had been complicit in my own disappearance. I had smiled through scraps of affection, told myself independence was noble, convinced myself that being needed was the same as being loved. But it wasn't. Love doesn't demand silence. Love doesn't take and take until you're hollow. Love doesn't ask you to vanish so others can shine brighter. The air in my apartment felt heavy, pressing against me like a weight. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I whispered it aloud, testing the words. No more. The sound startled me, but once spoken, it gained strength. No more. I rose to my feet, the string still clutched in one hand, beads rolling away under the couch. This was the breaking point. That night I wrote everything down. Not just in the spreadsheet, not just in fragments of memory, but in a raw, unfiltered document on my laptop. I typed furiously, fingers flying over the keys, cataloging every slight, every exclusion, every sacrifice that had been dismissed as just Rain being helpful. The document grew into pages, then dozens of pages. By midnight, I had a chronicle of neglect stretching back 2 decades. And for the first time seeing it all laid out, I felt less crazy. It wasn't in my head. It was real. The text messages kept buzzing, piling up. Rain, pick up your phone. We didn't mean it that way. Why are you acting like this? Don't ruin the family over something small. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room. But instead I took a screenshot of each message and added them to the file. Evidence. Proof. When Harper finally called, her voice rang through the room, polished and commanding as always. Rain, enough is enough. You're being dramatic. I let her talk for a full minute, her words sharp and dismissive, before I cut in. My voice was calm, too calm. Do you even hear yourself? You're asking me to keep playing my role. To keep smiling, clapping, paying, and disappearing when convenient. Rain, that's not. It is. And I'm done. I hung up before she could answer. The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was alive, thrumming with possibility. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling, my heart steady for the first time in days. This was no longer about proving anything to them. They'd never admit the truth, never acknowledge what they had done. This was about reclaiming myself. The breaking point wasn't a collapse. It was a beginning. I whispered again into the darkness, stronger this time. No more. And I meant it. The next morning, I woke with a steadiness that felt foreign. The ache in my chest hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted, hardened into something sharper, more useful. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about how to make my family happy. I was thinking about how to hold them accountable. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the document I'd typed the night before, the Chronicle of Neglect. The sheer volume of it made me pause. Dozens of pages, each entry a scar I'd once dismissed as just the way things are. But now they weren't just scars. They were ammunition. I scrolled to the bottom and added one more line. September, age 28. Discovered family's Alaskan cruise. No invitation. After 20 years of exclusion, enough is enough. Then I leaned back and let the question settle. What now? The answer came in fragments throughout the day. Sharp little sparks that lit up the corners of my mind. I started with the obvious. Money. My parents had leaned on me financially for years, framing it as family emergencies. I opened my banking app and tallied up every transfer, every check, every loan never repaid. The number made my breath hitch. Nearly $50,000 over the past decade. $50,000 I could have used for myself. Trips, a better apartment, a nest egg. I screenshot the transactions, lined them up alongside my written memories, and realized the truth. They hadn't just excluded me emotionally. They had exploited me financially. And people needed to see it. At first, I pictured confronting them privately, sitting across the table, laying out the evidence, watching their excuses crumble. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced for so long, whispered, "They'll only twist it. They'll make you the villain again." I knew that voice was right. If I wanted the truth to matter, it had to be undeniable, public. But how? That evening, I scrolled through social media, half distracted, until an idea clicked. My family was obsessed with appearances. Harper's Instagram was a curated gallery of gallery openings, designer dresses, and candid laughter. Cody's feed was full of fishing trips, tailgates, and his new puppy. Mom shared endless photo collages of family holidays. Always smiling, always perfect. Their lives were a performance. And I knew exactly how to interrupt the show. I spent the next few days laying groundwork. First, I organized the evidence. Photos of unequal gifts, screenshots of messages, bank statements, even old emails. I arranged them into folders, labeled neatly. Holidays, money, trips, excuses. Second, I started journaling. Raw entries about how each memory had felt at the time, how I'd rationalized it, how the truth now burned through those rationalizations. Reading them back, I realized the power wasn't just in the facts. It was in the story. People could ignore numbers. They couldn't ignore pain. On the third night, I sketched out my plan. Not a step-by-step blueprint, but enough to see the shape of it. Step 1. Gather the evidence. Step 2. Choose the stage. Step 3. Time the reveal. The cruise loomed large in my mind. A week in Alaska, the whole family together, oblivious to what awaited them. Maybe that was when I'd strike. The thought sent a shiver of something close to excitement through me. For once, I wasn't waiting to be invited. I was writing the invitation myself. Still doubt clawed at me. A small voice whispered, "Isn't this cruel? Aren't you becoming what you hate?" But I silenced it with a memory. 19. Mom had called, her voice trembling. "Rain, your father's medication. Insurance won't cover it this month. Could you help us out?" I had emptied my savings account, postponing a trip with friends. Later that week, I saw photos of Harper in Paris, a trip my parents had helped fund. Cruel wasn't telling the truth. Cruel was using someone's love as leverage while erasing them from the family portrait. No, I wasn't becoming them. I was finally refusing to play their game. By the end of the week, I had my arsenal ready. A digital folder, locked and backed up, containing every shred of proof. I gave it a name that made me smile grimly. The shadow file. But evidence alone wasn't enough. If I wanted the truth to land, I needed an audience. So I began watching them. Not in a creepy way, just carefully, deliberately. I checked Harper's Instagram daily, noting her countdown posts about the cruise. 2 weeks until Alaska. I saw Cody's Facebook updates about shopping for new hiking boots. Mom posted a photo of the family luggage lined up by the door, 4 suitcases gleaming like soldiers. 4, not 5. It was perfect. The final piece of the trap wasn't digital. It was emotional. Practice saying no to little things at first. A coworker asked if I could stay late and cover a shift. "Sorry, I can't," I said. And the world didn't end. My landlord hinted at raising rent early. "That's not in my lease," I replied, voice steady. Each no built a muscle I hadn't flexed before. Each no reminded me that I wasn't powerless. And with each no, I felt the plan solidify. The night before the cruise, I sat at my desk with the shadow file open. My finger hovered over the trackpad, heart pounding. 1 click, and everything could go live. Every photo, every message, every receipt. Their perfect facade shattered in an instant. But I didn't click. Not yet. Timing was everything. Instead, I closed the laptop and whispered to myself, "They won't see me coming." For the first time in my life, the thought didn't feel bitter. Felt electric. The morning of the cruise, I woke before dawn, heart pounding like a drum. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe I was nervous for my trip, the Lake Tahoe getaway I dreamed about, the one I should have been packing for. But reality hit fast. I wasn't packing. My family was. 4 suitcases, 4 tickets. 4 smiling faces. And me, the ghost. I made my coffee and sat at my desk, the shadow file open on the screen. The folders gleamed like lit fuses. Money, gifts, trips, excuses. Inside, decades of proof waited, quiet and patient. It was time. By mid-morning, my phone lit up with updates. Harper had posted a selfie in her airport outfit. Designer sunglasses, perfectly tousled hair, suitcase in frame. Caption: Alaska, here we come. Hashtag family first, hashtag blessed. I laughed. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Within the hour, Mom uploaded a group shot of the four of them boarding the plane. Their smiles stretched wide, eyes crinkling, arms wrapped around each other. No space where I should have been. That was the photo I chose. I downloaded it, saved it to a fresh folder titled Final Strike, and began typing. The post wasn't long. Just enough to cut through the facade. While my family heads off on a cruise without me, I thought I'd share what family first has looked like for me over the years. For 2 decades, I've been excluded from vacations, handed token gifts while others got thousands, and asked to cover emergencies that turned into vacations I wasn't invited to. I've given them nearly $50,000, skipped trips of my own, and smiled while they erased me from the family portrait. Today, I'm done being invisible. Beneath the words, I attached a collage. Screenshots of bank transfers, a Christmas photo with a scarf and MacBook contrast, Mom's message about the misunderstanding, and that freshly posted boarding photo. 4 suitcases, 4 smiles, and no rain. Then I hovered over the post button. My finger trembled, not from fear but from the sheer weight of the moment. Years of silence condensed into a single decision. Click. The trap was sprung. The notifications exploded within minutes. Likes, shares, comments, hundreds then thousands. My phone buzzed so furiously it vibrated off the table. This is heartbreaking. Rain, I see you. How could they treat you like this? You deserved better. Some were strangers. Some old classmates who remembered how I was always busy working when my family vacationed. A few even shared their own stories of being the forgotten child. I wasn't alone anymore. Then came the messages from my family. Harper, delete that now. You're humiliating us. Cody, what the hell, Rain? Why are you airing this online? Sweetheart, please. You're twisting things. Take it down before people get the wrong idea. Wrong idea. I screenshotted those too and added them to the thread. Not twisting. Just telling the truth. The comments flooded again. Supportive, outraged, demanding accountability. People tagged Harper's Instagram, Cody's Facebook, Mom's profile. Their polished image unraveled in real time. By the time their plane landed in Seattle for the cruise departure, the story had gone viral. Local news outlets picked it up. Daughter claims family excluded her for years, provides receipts. Reddit threads dissected the photos. Twitter, or whatever name it bore now, turned my words into hashtags. I watched it unfold with a strange detachment, like I was observing someone else's life. Except it was mine. And for once, I wasn't invisible. The phone rang. I let it buzz, then hit decline. Seconds later it rang again. Harper. Decline. Then Mom. Decline. Finally I answered Cody's call, more out of curiosity than mercy. What the hell, Rain? His voice was tight, panicked. Do you know what you've done? People are messaging me nonstop. My boss saw it. Harper's losing followers by the second. You're destroying us. No, I said calmly. I'm showing people who you really are. You could have talked to us privately. I tried. For years. You ignored me. This is the only way you'd listen. He sputtered, grasping for words, but I cut him off. You're worried about your image. I'm worried about the decades you all erased me. Tell me, Cody, when was the last time you asked me what I wanted? What I needed? Silence. Then a click. He hung up. The messages grew desperate as the day wore on. Mom begged me to stop. Harper threatened legal action, though I knew she had no case. Dad sent a single line. "You've embarrassed this family." Embarrassed. I stared at the word, bile rising. That was his concern. Not my pain, not the truth. Just appearances. Type back, "No, Dad. You did that yourselves." And for the first time I felt no guilt. By evening the internet was ablaze. Bloggers dissected the story. Strangers debated it in comment sections. Old acquaintances DM'd me to say they'd always sensed something was off with my family dynamic. My siblings tried to post counter-narratives. Photos of us smiling together. Captions about how family isn't perfect, but we love each other. But the shadow file had already spoken. And people weren't buying the spin. One comment under Harper's post stood out. "Funny how Rain's name is missing from that cruise ticket photo. Maybe she's not the dramatic one after all." I screenshot it, smiled, and set my phone down. That night, I walked through my apartment, every step lighter than it had been in years. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was liberating. For the first time the world saw me. Not the helper, not the shadow, not the placeholder. Me. I hadn't just unmasked them. I'd reclaimed myself. And as I curled up in bed, the notifications still buzzing faintly in the background, one thought pulsed steady in my chest. This was only the beginning. The morning after my post detonated across the internet, I woke to a silence I hadn't known in years. No buzzing phone, no barrage of guilt-soaked texts, no voicemail threats cloaked as concern. It was as if the storm had spent itself overnight, leaving the air crisp, raw, and strangely clear. For the first time I didn't reach for my phone immediately. I made coffee, stood by the window, and let the steam curl against my face. The quiet felt like freedom. But the world hadn't gone still. Not at all. When I finally checked my phone, the notifications were still pouring in, though slower now, more deliberate. My story had been picked up by national outlets. Headlines read, "Forgotten daughter speaks out and the family black sheep goes viral." Comments still flooded in. "Rain, you're so brave. Your story gave me courage to set my own boundaries. I'm crying reading this. Thank you." It wasn't just validation, it was solidarity. People I had never met carried fragments of my pain, and now they were placing them beside mine, like mosaic tiles forming a larger truth. We weren't alone. My family, however, was reeling. Harper's influencer brand took the biggest hit. Within days, sponsorship deals quietly vanished, her follower count plummeting. She tried spinning it, posting teary videos about misunderstandings, but the receipts I'd shared undermined every word. Cody sent one last text. "Hope you're happy. You ruined us." I didn't reply. He was wrong anyway. I hadn't ruined them, they'd done that themselves. I just pulled back the curtain. Mom and Dad stayed silent longer, but eventually an email arrived. "Rain, we didn't realize how deeply we hurt you. We thought you understood we had to make sacrifices, but maybe we asked too much of you. We want to make it right. Please, family therapy when we get back." It wasn't the apology I craved. It was riddled with half-justifications, but it was more acknowledgement than I'd ever received. For the first time the power dynamic had shifted. They were the ones asking, and I was the one choosing. But before I could even consider their request, I had something more important to do: reclaim my own life. I booked the trip I'd cancelled years ago. Not Alaska, not a cruise. My family could keep their itineraries. I booked a flight to Barcelona solo. No one's plus one. No compromises. I told Melissa, my steadfast best friend, and she squealed so loud I thought my phone might shatter. "You're going to drink sangria on rooftops, dance at midnight, and finally live," she declared. And for once I believed her. The weeks leading up to the trip felt like shedding skin. I closed the joint bank account my parents had once borrowed from. I boxed up old family mementos, the unopened jewelry kit, the years of one-sided Christmas cards, even the dusty photo albums that showcased their smiles without me. I didn't burn them. I wasn't looking for destruction. I simply placed them in storage, no longer anchors around my neck. Then, in a moment that felt both small and seismic, I bought myself something I'd always wanted. A silver pendant in the shape of a raindrop. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't expensive. But it was mine. Chosen, purchased, and worn for no one else's approval. When I clasped it around my neck, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For once, the woman looking back didn't seem like a ghost. The trip to Barcelona was everything my family vacations had never been. I wandered through winding Gothic streets with no itinerary, stopping at cafes simply because the pastries in the window looked too beautiful to ignore. I toured the Sagrada Familia and felt tears prick my eyes, not from exclusion, but from the overwhelming sense that I was exactly where I was meant to be. I danced with strangers at a midnight festival, laughed until my ribs ached, and sat alone on a rooftop with a glass of wine, realizing solitude could feel like abundance. Every moment was mine, and not once did I feel invisible. When I returned home, sun-kissed and steadier than ever, I found another invitation waiting, this one to my parents' wedding anniversary party. Unlike years past, the message wasn't a demand. It was careful, tentative. Rain, we'd love for you to come if you feel ready. No pressure. I stared at the words, conflicted. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut forever. Another part, the tired, hopeful sliver of me, wondered if change was possible. So I went. The party was smaller than usual, quieter. No flashy displays, no exaggerated toasts. When I walked in, conversations stilled. For once, all eyes were on me, not in judgment but in recognition. Harper avoided me, hovering near the bar. Cody offered a stiff nod. But Mom approached slowly, as if testing fragile ground. "Rain," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." It wasn't much, but it was something. Later, Dad even admitted, awkwardly, haltingly, that they hadn't realized how much they leaned on me, how much they'd excluded me. "We're trying," he said, and though the words were clumsy, they were real. I didn't forgive them on the spot. Healing wasn't a switch. But I left that night knowing I had a choice again. Voice. And that was enough. Months later, my apartment was no longer a place of loneliness but of community. Thanksgiving came, and instead of sitting at my family's crowded table as the forgotten seat filler, I hosted my own dinner. Melissa brought her new boyfriend. A neighbor brought homemade pie. Co-workers I once considered acquaintances filled my living room with laughter. We clinked glasses, shared stories, and for the first time in years I felt surrounded by family. The kind you choose, the kind that chooses you back. No guilt. No erasure. Just warmth. One quiet Sunday, I pulled the old jewelry kit from its box. 4 years it had sat unopened, a symbol of everything I'd been denied. But now it was just beads and string, waiting for hands willing to shape it. I poured the contents onto my table. The beads scattered in imperfect little bursts of color, mismatched, uneven, flawed. I strung them together slowly, deliberately, creating a necklace that was messy and lopsided but uniquely mine. When I clasped it beside the silver raindrop pendant, I smiled. Because at last, I wasn't wearing their neglect. I was wearing my story. And it was beautiful,